I didn't go in expecting to change anything about my life. I just wanted a tattoo, something small. A mark to close the chapter on a 6-year relationship that had dried up slowly, like a lake bed cracking under too much sun. The studio was tucked behind a bakery, the kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. I almost turned around twice, once because I didn't think I had the nerve, and once because the window fogged up and I couldn't see inside. But something about the hand-painted sign above the door, Luce Moretti, fine-line tattoos and custom work, held me in place. I pushed the door open. The inside smelled like lemon antiseptic and bergamot candles. It was quieter than I imagined. No loud rock music, no buzzing machines, just the soft shuffle of someone moving paper around. For a moment, I stood there, unsure if I should announce myself. My palms were sweaty in the cuffs of my coat. Then she appeared from the back. Lucia Moretti. Luce, I'd later learn. Dark brown hair pulled up in a loose knot, wisps falling over her temples. Dark sweater sleeves pushed to her elbows, revealing faint shadows of her own tattoos wrapping around her forearms. Ink so fine it looked like brush strokes. She wasn't what I expected. No leather, no piercings, just calm eyes and hands that looked like they'd spent years learning how to touch without hurting. "You must be Kara," she said. I nodded. "Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to announce myself." "You did just fine." She smiled, a quiet thing, and gestured toward a chair by the front desk. "Come sit. Let's talk about what brought you in." What brought me in? That was the thing. I didn't know. Not exactly. I'd filled out the online form with vague ideas. Something small, maybe a flower, nothing too visible. But sitting there under her steady gaze, I realized I hadn't really thought it through. I just needed something, a reason to feel my body as mine again. "My girlfriend and I broke up," I said, surprising myself. "Ex-girlfriend, I guess." She nodded, waiting. "It's been 6 years. I moved out last week. I kept thinking I'd feel free or angry or something big, but I just feel kind of blank." There was no judgment in her face. She only folded her hands on the desk and said, "So you want something to mark the ending?" "Yeah, or the beginning. I don't know. Both, maybe?" Another quiet nod. "Where do you want it?" "I'm not sure." "Do you want it to be visible to others, or just for you?" That question caught me off guard. No one had asked it like that before. Not even when I'd talked to friends about getting a tattoo. They all jumped to designs or trends, but this felt like something else. "I think I want it for me. Maybe somewhere I can touch it, but no one else sees." That made her smile again, just the corner of her mouth twitching up. "We'll figure it out together." She stood and motioned for me to follow her. The studio room was all clean lines and warm light, the windows high and narrow, giving everything a soft golden hue. A shelf by the back wall held plants in terracotta pots and small glass jars filled with ink in every shade imaginable. There was a faint hum from the sterilizer. No music still, just the occasional sound of traffic from outside. She handed me a clipboard. "Fill this out while I draw something." I hesitated. "But I haven't told you what I want." "You told me enough," she said. Then she disappeared behind a curtain, leaving me blinking. I filled out the waiver with shaky hands. My heart was beating harder than it should have been for someone just sitting in a chair. I read and reread the part about permanent body modification, like the reality hadn't already settled in. When Luce returned, she had a small sketch on tracing paper. A single stem with 2 open poppies, delicate and a little wild, their leaves imperfect, the petals lopsided. It looked like something that had once grown between cracks in the pavement. "Too much?" she asked. "No," I whispered. "It's perfect," She didn't ask where. She just waited. I found myself standing and tugging my sweater hem up, fingers grazing the side of my rib cage. "Here," I said, tapping the space just under my left breast. "I want it here." She nodded. "You sure?" I nodded back, though I wasn't sure of anything anymore, except that this mattered. She prepped the stencil in silence, and I removed my shirt, folding it neatly over my bag. When she pressed the paper against my skin, her fingers were so gentle it made my stomach tense. Not in discomfort, but something else. Her touch was light, like reverence. "You okay?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I breathed. "I just didn't expect it to feel like this." "Like what?" "I don't know, intimate." She paused. "A lot of people feel that. This is the only time in your life someone's going to deliberately cause you pain with your permission and make something beautiful out of it." That sentence stayed with me long after the needle started. It didn't hurt as much as I expected. It wasn't pleasant, but it was tolerable. Sharp and steady, like being reminded that you're alive. I watched her work in the mirror, her expression focused, her mouth slightly parted, the machine buzzing quietly between us. Halfway through, I felt something tighten in my throat. I blinked fast. I didn't want to cry. Luce noticed. She slowed, set the machine down, and looked up at me. "You okay to keep going?" I nodded. "Yeah, it's not the pain." "I know," she said gently. "You're doing fine." She cleaned the area and picked the machine back up. When it was over, she applied ointment with the same care she'd used for everything else. Her fingers brushed the skin around the ink, tracing the lines, checking the edges. I felt heat rise in my chest. She helped me sit up and held a mirror so I could see. The poppies looked like they belonged there, like they'd always been there. I swallowed hard. "Thank you." "You're welcome." I paid at the front, still feeling dazed. As I pulled on my coat, Luce tucked her hair behind one ear and asked, "You said you wanted something small, but this felt bigger, didn't it?" I nodded. "If you ever want to add to it, I keep Mondays open for returning clients." I left the shop with the bandage under my sweater, and her words echoing in my mind. It wasn't a flirtation. Not really. But something had been opened, and I couldn't pretend it hadn't. As I walked to the train, I already knew I'd be back. I told myself I went back for the ink. That was easier than admitting I missed the way she made me feel, like I could finally tell the truth to myself without pretending to be more okay than I was. 2 weeks after my first appointment, I emailed Luce and said I wanted to add something. She didn't ask what, just replied with a Monday time and a simple, "Looking forward to it." When I showed up, she already had coffee waiting, black for her, oat milk for me. I hadn't told her how I took it. "This okay?" she asked, handing me the cup. I nodded, a little caught off guard. "Yeah, thanks." The design we added was barely bigger than a thumbprint, a tiny constellation just below the poppies. She didn't ask what it meant. Maybe she knew not everything needed explaining. That became our rhythm. I'd come in, sometimes with an idea, sometimes not. Luce would draw something while I sat beside her quietly, the sound of pencil on tracing paper, and the occasional sip of coffee the only interruptions. Then she'd take me to the back and press her hands to my skin again, and everything in me would go still. Over time, the tattoos made a path, under my collarbone, along the inside of my arm, low on my ribs. Quiet places, places no one else would see unless I showed them. I told myself that's why I kept choosing those spots. But it wasn't just about the ink. It was about the moments in between, when her fingers adjusted the angle of my body, when her eyes lingered a second longer than necessary, when our breath synced without us trying. I hadn't touched anyone since my ex. Hadn't wanted to. But Luce had a way of making silence feel like touch. On my 5th visit, she worked on the inside of my wrist, something delicate and fine, half script, half symbol, something I'd seen in a dream and tried to draw. She refined it into something beautiful. As she worked, her fingers gently anchored my hand, her thumb brushing back and forth across my palm without thought. "You okay?" she asked, glancing up. I nodded. "It's just weird how quiet I feel when I'm here." She smiled faintly. "People say that a lot. It's not like that with most people." "No," she said softly, going back to the ink. "It's not." When she finished, she placed a thin bandage over the design and held my wrist a little longer than usual, eyes on mine. "You've got a high pain tolerance," she said. "I guess I've had practice." She tilted her head, thoughtful. "From the breakup?" "From life," I said with a shrug. She didn't push, just nodded and said, "Let me make you some tea." I followed her into the tiny break room in the back, where she had a mismatched kettle and chipped ceramic mugs. The space smelled faintly of lavender and ink. She poured me a cup and leaned against the counter across from me, sipping hers in silence. I don't know what possessed me to speak, but I did. "I don't think my ex ever really looked at me," I said quietly. "She saw who she wanted me to be, who I was supposed to become if I just kept shrinking." Luce said nothing, just sipped her tea, listening. I started to believe that was love, that it was normal to feel invisible most of the time, like my skin didn't belong to me. Her eyes softened. "But it does now. I think I'm trying to take it back." "That's what it feels like," she said. "When people ask for tattoos in places they cover up, it's not about hiding. It's about reclaiming." I looked down at the bandage. "Why do you do this? I mean, you could have picked any kind of art." Her smile changed. Not polite, but private. "Because skin tells the truth. You can't fake it. Every scar, every freckle, every part someone's tried to forget. It's all there, right in front of you. When someone lets you mark that, it's like being trusted with something sacred." The room went still. She wasn't trying to sound poetic. It was just what she believed. She glanced down at my cup. "Want to see one of mine?" I blinked. "Yeah." She set her tea aside, pulled up the hem of her sweater, and turned. On the back of her shoulder, where her bra strap crossed, was a tattoo of a small window with light streaming through it. You had to look twice to see the outline of a figure curled just beneath the sill. "It's me," she said, eyes on the opposite wall. "When I first left home, I didn't speak to my family for over a year. They wanted me to take over the family bakery. I wanted this." "It's beautiful," I said, and I meant it. When she looked back at me, her hair had come loose from its knot. A strand clung to her cheek. I reached out and tucked it behind her ear without thinking. She didn't move, just watched me with something quiet and unspoken in her eyes. But nothing happened. No sudden kiss, no dramatic line crossed, just breath, and the feeling that something had begun, even if neither of us named it. That night, in bed, I pressed my fingers gently to my new bandage. The spot on my wrist pulsed softly. Not with pain, with memory. Her touch, her steadiness, her restraint. I thought about the way she'd looked at me, not like I was broken or fragile, or someone in need of fixing, just like I was there, in front of her, real. I'd known people who kissed me without ever seeing me, but Luce hadn't kissed me. And still I felt more alive than I ever had before. I turned out the light, and for the first time in weeks, I slept straight through the night. The thing about longing is that it doesn't always announce itself. It lingers quietly, brushing up against your thoughts in the quiet moments, in steam rising from a tea mug, or the feel of your sleeve brushing against a healing tattoo. It builds without fanfare, just the slow, steady ache of wanting something you've told yourself not to want. Luce hadn't touched me outside the chair, but the weight of her hands during a session, her fingertips on my skin, Her voice low when she asked if I was okay, stayed with me far longer than any ink she laid down. By the time I came in for my 7th appointment, I wasn't sure who I was fooling anymore. I'd begun inventing reasons to come back. "I'm not sure what I want today," I said, shrugging off my coat. "I just wanted something new." Luce didn't comment. She just nodded and said, "You want to sit with me while I sketch?" I nodded and followed her into the back. The design that took shape under her pencil was a pair of hands, one slightly reaching, the other relaxed, not grasping, not clinging, just suspended in quiet motion. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't overt. But it was intimate. Tender, even. "Where would this go?" I asked. She paused, eyes on mine. "That depends. What are you trying to say with it?" I hesitated, then quietly, "That not every kind of closeness is about possession. Sometimes it's just trust." Luce's eyes flicked back to the drawing. "I'd place it near the hip, low enough that no one sees it, unless you want them to." I nodded slowly. "Okay." The setup took longer this time. The position was awkward. I had to lower my waistband slightly and lie halfway on my side. She was careful, pulling a curtain across the room even though we were alone, draping a cloth over me to shield everything but the skin she needed. It should have felt clinical. It didn't. Her hand rested gently on my waist as she lined up the stencil. The quiet between us was soft and electric. "Still okay?" she asked, voice near my ear. I swallowed. "Yeah." She started the machine. The buzz was familiar now. So was the heat. But this time, I felt it all more. The placement, the angle of her body close to mine, the pull in her brow as she focused. At one point, her palm rested flat on my lower back for balance, and I felt goosebumps race up my spine. She paused. "Cold?" she asked, already reaching for a blanket. "No," I said too quickly. "I'm okay." She didn't push, just nodded and kept working. When it was finished, she covered it carefully and helped me sit up, her hands light on my shoulders. I kept my gaze on the floor as I adjusted my clothing, trying to calm the tremor in my hands. Back at the front desk, I fumbled for my wallet. Luce gently placed her hand over mine. "This one's on me," she said. "What?" "No, It wasn't about the tattoo," she said softly. "Not really." I didn't know what to say to that. Her hand stayed on mine. "Kara," she said, and just the sound of my name in her voice made my chest ache. I looked up. There was no performance in her expression, no distance. "Will you stay a little?" she asked. "After I close?" I nodded before I even thought about it. She locked the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and dimmed the overhead lights. Only the soft glow from the desk lamp remained. She didn't say anything at first, just brewed a fresh cup of tea, handed it to me, and sat across from me in one of the client chairs. Her sleeves were pushed up again, revealing the brush-stroke ink on her arms. But this time, I wasn't distracted by the art. I was looking at her, noticing the curve of her neck, the quiet strength in the way she held her hands when she wasn't working. How her eyes kept flicking toward me and then away, like she didn't want to break something delicate between us. "I don't usually cross this line," she said after a long silence. "What line?" "Clients, work, personal." "Oh." She looked down at her tea. "But I've been thinking about you more than I should." I didn't breathe for a moment. Then, "I've been thinking about you too." Luce looked up at that, really looked, and not like she was assessing me, not like a client, like she wanted to memorize something. I set my cup down. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Is it just about the tattoos, or do you feel it too?" She stood up slowly, walked to where I sat, and knelt down in front of me. "I feel it," she said quietly. Her hand rested on my knee, warm through my jeans. Not urgent, not hungry, just present. I leaned forward and she met me halfway. The kiss was unhurried, a slow exhale, her lips soft and certain against mine, tasting faintly of jasmine and something sweeter. Her hand slid to my jaw, cradling it gently as if testing how much I was willing to give. I let go, not out of recklessness, out of relief. She kissed me again, deeper this time, and I moved my hands to her hips, drawing her closer. When her fingers slipped beneath the hem of my sweater, just brushing the small of my back, I felt something open inside me I hadn't let anyone near in years. It wasn't the heat that undid me. It was the tenderness, but the way she moved. Eventually, we ended up in the back room again, the studio dim, the machines quiet. I sat on the table, and she stood between my legs, arms around my waist, forehead resting against mine. "No expectations," she said. "You can stop me any time." "I don't want to stop," I whispered. Her fingers skimmed beneath my shirt, not rushed, just enough to feel me shiver. I let her peel it off slowly. When her lips found the top of my shoulder, the space above my first tattoo, I felt like my body had been waiting for her since before I even knew her name. We didn't rush anything. We didn't need to. It wasn't about claiming each other. It wasn't even about sex, not entirely. It was about being allowed to feel without explanation. It was about her hands tracing the stories we hadn't said out loud yet. Later, lying beside her on a blanket pulled from the storage closet, I felt her fingers brush over the fresh bandage on my hip. "This one means something," she said. "They all do," I replied. She smiled faintly, brushing hair from my face. "This one's different." "Yeah," I said, my voice a little rough. "It's the first one that feels like a beginning." She leaned in and kissed my cheek. The kind of kiss you don't give unless you mean it. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a body someone used to forget someone else. I felt like a story someone was choosing to stay and read,